All right, boys. Here is another one. It looks like they're adding in a couple things. Sorry, I look a little bit tired. I just woke up. So I woke up and we have some more balance changes. Man, this is they're really on it with these balance changes. So I'm just start off just reading what's going on. Let me actually make sure my thing is cutting off a little bit, but it should be okay. All right. So now with the general debuff nuker, nerf a couple more AV8 changes will be made. These will see much more community involvement. There'll be a couple discussions on Discord. We will invite some people that are already gave constructive criticism in the past. These people will be able to suggest one more person each, and a couple more to be suggested here in the formal Discord. And then it looks like it's going into each topic. And I think it looks like only the Albion tanker topic is open. So I kind of like the direction you're going, trying to get more community involvement. Honestly, so the changes that we talked about last time were actually implemented. So Bard's got root down. The casters debuffs got nerfs. Cabby outcaster got nerfed. And all those details went through. And also the shaman got the near side heal. Honestly, I really would love for this to at least play out for like a good 2 weeks, 3 weeks, just to see how people feel before we kind of go into more changes. From the understanding that I'm getting here, it looks like all of these are going to be discussed one by one, but it's going to be really hard to discuss changes that are going to happen to all these realms without having the concept of those changes already being implemented. Like, if we change everything at once and all of those things all go into the game, the thoughts that we had in the past could be completely different than the ones we have in that moment. So I don't know if this is the best way to go about it. I'm a strong proponent of like small incremental changes. Like, I feel like for just the last patch that happened today on the 23rd, it could have just been all debuffs. It could have been like maybe 2 or 3 of those things that happened. So it could have been like all the debuffs got nerfed, and then Bart got root. And then you'll see how it plays out. And then we added Shamans got near sight cure, and Thanes got their thing. And then we see how it plays out. Kind of small incremental changes week over week, and let the community slowly see if that's something they want. When I'm thinking about this, like looking at all these things, you have the Albion tanker buff, mid caster buffs, hib caster buff, hib tanker nerfs. That's a lot of buffs comparatively to nerfs. It might be that kind of that power creep that we see when on live. I'm hoping it's not going to be that, but this is kind of the concept that live was kind of going, where like, this is not working, so let me buff this. So this is not working, so let me buff this a little bit, and this buff it, and then you get to the power creep. I could be wrong, but that's what I'm kind of seeing. Also, any changes that happen in 8v8 affects 100% affects the small man, and it affects solo. So something we definitely need to be concerned about. That's why I'm so concerned about Bards getting root. Small man Bards getting root is pretty gnarly. I can definitely say I don't agree with that change. Even though I play Bard consistently, I know it's gonna be really strong. But yeah, let's go into it. So we got Albion Tinker buffs. So this is an opening statement. Staff suggestions for the discussions regarding the Tinker buff part of the AV8 balance changes with the community involvement. Cool. I honestly feel like they should have did this from the get-go before they implement stuff, because then people could go back and have a log of the thing that were discussed and then was actually implemented. But it's cool that they're doing it now. So the core tanker setup would be Merc, Arms, Sork, Third, Cleric, Minstrel. Wait, what? Merc, Minstrel. Okay, sure. That could be a group. I'm surprised there's not like Reaver or Necromancer for sure. I'm surprised that's not in there. But that could work. All of those are like either plate or scale armor, so that is definitely a tanker. Normally people would run the 2 Minstrels over a Sork. So it'd be minstrel instead of the Sork, because then everyone has chain and plate. But that was before the minstrel changes. I don't know if people are into it now. So variations include swapping 1 cleric for a friar, arms to a poly. You definitely need a poly for Indo. A merc to poly, and also the AF chant with the tanky setup is amazing. One merc for Apala, one merc for Necro, one merc for Cab, third for Necro, third for Cab. Yes, that is also a thing. The third just you can even do like 3 third just in a Necro and it'll work out. But so I understand what they're trying to do. I don't know if this is the best concept of going about changes, seeing like, hey, this group is what we're trying to buff, nerf, or anything, but this is the set group we're thinking about. Rather than, hey, this class needs this or this class needs this, you know, because that might be a little bit better if you thought about it in classes and then thought about their synergies together, because then that would be more affecting solo man and solo and small man. It'd be a lot more like thoughtful for them. But when you think of it like, hey, these 8 people synergy, how can I make this better? You really kind of leave out the small man and solo. So I don't know if the concept is the best way to go about it. So the first problem is that people want a peeler, where arms is just the best peeler. People also want a very strong tank RAs. Tanks are Alp Tanker is already pretty strong. Like just no one runs it. Like Alp Tanker is pretty strong though. It's not bad, especially with a Necromancer. At the same time, Tanker with only N3 is an actual problem. The next issue is people want other resists, but a Friar is but a Friar is. In terms of healing capacity as well as RAs, a worse choice than Cleric. The final issue is the Merc and the lack of a back snare. Friars are a worse choice than Cleric in all ways. Well, it's a different role, right? Well, Cleric, 2 high RR Clerics, without a doubt, like they're very, very strong, without a doubt. I think Friars come in whenever you need those extra snares in the backline, and a very good Friar will win you a match every single time, especially with peeling. But if you're running a Tinker, you're not worried about that too much. So I don't see why you would need a Friar, so I can understand that. In a Tinker, I guess you would need it, but you want those extra resists. I think that's the only reason why you probably would run a Friar and a Tinker. Yeah, the extra resist is the only thing I can think of. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. I don't know that we need to change something because of that, because Friars are very strong solo, small man, and in groups, especially caster groups. Caster groups, you have someone in the back to be able to snare for you and snare off the clerics. And that's whenever your peeler is up front and he can't get to the back, you know? So they're already pretty strong. Now, giving them better RAs for later game to compare them to cleric, that might be an option. Because honestly, Friars have Mach and ST and VR. And that's kind of the thing that's pretty much it. You could give them more options like Cleric has to make them, whenever they're higher RR, to make them comparable to Cleric. That would be really nice. And I don't think that would affect Small Man or Solo too much, just giving them more availability to do something, or more heals in some type of way. Whenever they hire RR to make them comparable, I don't think that would be bad. But I don't think you should go too far with the Cleric and the Friar. Friars are already pretty good, especially now that they have back snare and side snare. So they're just as good as the mid tankers that have the back snare and side snare, because they have that. So they can snare you 100% always. So the final issue is the Merc and the lack of a back snare. I'm cool with that. You can give them a back snare. Like that's not that. I don't mind that at all. Because BM has a back snare. So the starting point for the discussion on how to fix this would be the 21 DW style will be removed from the back chain and become a back opener with the snare component and a growth rate reduced to normal back opener levels. This would be, I think honestly, this would be fine for small man. This would be fine for 8v8. This is fine for Zerg, solo. Like, I don't think anyone would mind this change. It does let the Merc be able to do a lot more in an 8-man setup, because then they have back snare, and I believe they already have a side snare, and that's really what you kind of need for peeling purposes. So they'd be like a BM, where a BM could just kind of fits in anywhere. They could add that. I don't mind this change at all. It kind of opens them up to a lot more comps, so I'm not mad at it. I like it. And And I think the main thing that we should be looking for in changes is not necessarily to shake up the meta, but it's purely just to look at these classes are not, these classes might lead a small bump this way or that way. You want it to where it's like Midgard PvE, where you just pick up any melee class and it doesn't matter, your comp is going to be amazing, right? You want that for like the Hib, mid, and all those things. They're RVR classes where you could pick up anything. Is like, oh, okay, this comp kind of works because this guy can do this guy can do that. And they have that availability, not necessarily like I need to nerf this really, really good class or I need to buff this really bad class, you know, and kind of having like just baby steps, if that makes any sense. Sorry, kind of lost track there. So there are IMO 2 class candidates that could be buffed accordingly to resolve the other issues. The first candidate is a Paladin and the other is a Friar. Okay, Paladin and a Friar. A Paladin is, I honestly feel like Paladin is already pretty strong. I could be wrong, but they have gotten like a damage buff, they gotten chance buff, they gotten spec buffs, they like actual spec points buffs. Honestly, Paladin is really good. I don't think they need anything more. Honestly, I think they're pretty set. The only thing I can think of is like the Merc having that back and side stare. That's totally fine, and maybe the Friar getting something like whenever they're higher RR. But honestly, the tank group is pretty good. It's just no one really runs the Alp Tanker because Alp Caster is just super strong. Like, why would you run Tanker if you can run a Caster? That, like, two-shot shit. No, they don't two-shot shit. Honestly, it's their pets. They just have so many pets, it doesn't matter what you do. You can make so many mistakes because you have so many pets. So, keep reading. For the Friar, I see potential that isn't too far-fetched. Will earn the least of it resistance. The assumption here is to replace one cleric with a Friar. The non-controversial, controversial, or at least less controversial change where it would be to add group endurance consumption reduction buff to the Friar. This would resolve the endurance issue. Sure, that could work. I still wouldn't take it over. I honestly would not take that over cleric still. But I guess it's a start. If I did want to do that, how does that affect small man? How does that affect? That means the duo of Menstrual Friar is going to be still a duo between Menstrual Friar was always pretty amazing, but it's going to make that even stronger. I don't know if you want to go this direction. I don't know if this seems like just a buff just to give them a buff. It doesn't exactly change the outcome. I honestly think it has more to do, if we are going to change the Friar for the cleric, the whole concept is that the cleric has way more heal potential than a Friar regardless in a tanker, because you have instas. So the main thing is, how can we help the Friar in their healing capacity to be comparable to a cleric? And I honestly think it might be through like RAs, because honestly, it's just the cleric's RAs that have so much more potential than a Friar does that really stops it. But obviously, I think it's got to be a small tweak because Friars are already good. I think they're already pretty solid. So the other issue is the healing capacities. The most pressing issue here is how easy it is to lock down a Friar resulting in 0 input. Okay, this would be fine if the Friar were just the third support as a case of the Warden or a lesser extent Bard Shaman. However, in most likely resulting setup, the Friar will act as the second healer. Correct. I could see a low 25% single insta on a 2-minute cooldown that can be used on the Friar itself. Okay. So an one insta. You have a VR and then you have an insta. Okay. So small man would be stronger at least, but that's not too bad. So it's be resulting, but also you got to think about this. Clerics cannot peel off themselves. Friars can always peel off themselves. So you got to be very careful about how you give them instas, because Friars can always snare. A good Friar is not going to let a tank stay on them for long. So you are adding potential, like You're adding potential for friars that don't know exactly how to peel out themselves and they can do something, but you're also adding way more to the person that is very competent and can snare off themselves. So they have that's just another toy that they can use. Honestly, most friars they're stuck down for maybe like 3 to 4 seconds before they snare themselves off, snare whoever's on them off, and then they're free again. Um, so I don't know if giving them just that small baseline insta would be the best, but actually I could see it working out. I don't know if I would still take a friar over a cleric, but I could see how the somewhere the issue revolves around an it revolves around an instant. That's pretty much where the issue is resolving around, an instant in some sort of capacity. I'm not sure what kind of instant, whether it needs to be a heal, a damage absorption, or anything like that, but I can tell it's something to do with an instant. Alternatively, to really drive it home that this is just a crutch to allow the friar to be available to cleric replacement. It could be a 50% insta that's reduced by 25% per primary healer in the group. However, that seems unlikely to be necessary. It could be a 50%. Nah, don't do that because then it's just gonna get confusing. Like if you're in small man or if you're in solo or if you're in a group, it's kind of like, how much am I gonna heal myself? Oh, I gotta count the number in my group. Oh, my insta is gonna be this much, and now I have to calculate that into my gameplay. You don't have to make it that complicated, but I can understand. I think it honestly has something to do with an insta, and maybe it should be a little bit more unique. Maybe it should be some sort of absorption, or maybe it could be a group resist increase rather than a straight up heal. Make it something a little bit more dynamic, where it's like, oh, there's a lot of hib casters on right now. I want to bring in the Friar because the Friar has resist buffs. He has the group magic absorption. And I don't really want to bring the cleric because, and I'll bring the cleric because this is a tanker, and I want the instas and everything's gonna be erupted. That's what I want. And we're fighting other tankers, so we want just to have clerics. Just make it a little bit more dynamic, where it's not necessarily like, where there's not. They are put in depending on what you're fighting, rather than they are put in because they're just good. The Paladin change would go in a different direction, assume a replacement of a minstrel by the Paladin. To make this possible, the Paladin would receive a speed 5. All right, no, I just know. I see where you're coming from. Sorry about that. Seems very dismissive. I'm sure you guys have thought this through 50 million times. So take my words with a grain of salt. But that is probably not necessarily. Please do not do this. Give them speed 5 chant. That is not. I don't think that's the right direction to go. I'll let everyone else have a say on it too, but I don't think that's the right way to go. This would make it valuable. Jeez, I can't speak today, dude. I'm sorry, I just woke up. That word to include a Paladin, while at the same time not being a clear-cut Albion buffs, as the Friar route would be, as the utility of a minstrel would be lost. So you're going to take out the minstrel and put in a Paladin, and the Paladin's going to have a speed 5 buff. I don't think that is the best direction to take at all. That once you do this, you are getting into the live/alternate gameplay type changes. Do you remember how style buffs were a change and everyone is like, yo, stop. That's not what we want. That change would be one of those things where it'd be like, Paladins have speed 5? Phoenix? Yeah, we don't play Phoenix. That's not classic. That's some custom stuff. And now it's already custom. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of custom stuff already. But once big changes like that hits, where classes are not even, they're like doing complete other classes roles, I don't know about that one. Also solo, man. You go around solo Pala now. Solo Pala would be pretty insane. And also freaking duo Paladin Friar, duo Paladin Cleric if you want, duo Paladin Sork, like. The duos and the small man was be insane with that change. It would open up a lot of different things, and I don't know if that's the stuff you want to be opening. But overall, like, I can understand the concepts. Do I agree with some of the? Honestly, with the two suggestions here, like I can understand it. I think the concept of the group endurance consumption reduction buff, that is the concept we should be pushing forward with the Friar instead of like instas. I feel like it should be some sort of like magic absorption or something like that, because you want it to fill its role, but you don't want it to be like, oh, we're taking it because it's purely better than this other class. You wanted to take it because, oh, this is what's happening on the frontiers. I know what is out right now. We need to bring a Friar because we need this, this, and this. Not necessarily because it's better. It's because this is what is available. I mean, this is what's out, and this is what we need to counter that. You know? So it's rather than like, and tic-tac-toe is kind of like, not tic-tac-toe, and like rock paper, it should be more like rock paper scissors rather than like fucking rock paper thunder, and then thunder always wins, you know, like. And I think with the concept with the Paladin buff speed 5, that is like having rock paper scissors and then thunder, like you're always gonna pick thunder because thunder fucks everything up, you know. Excuse my language, but I don't know. I feel like the main concept and the draw of Dark Age of Camelot has always been that rock, paper, scissors, where tanks need to be on the casters and the casters need to kite. The healers have their role. The peelers have their role. Everyone has a role. But I think it gets iffy once the casters can play a tank, or the tanks can play a caster, and then the healers can play a caster, and the healers can play the peels. Kind of like when you have wardens that have slam and all that stuff. Like, that's when it gets a little bit, okay, now you're overpowering other classes to even have a chance to get in a role. So I think the concept of like kind of like the group concession buffs, I really love it. Or something in that esque, where it's not exactly an insta where you would be like, okay, I definitely want a cleric, but more of like situational where you would put this in. And mind you, all these changes, Friar is always already good. Like before all of this change, Friar is already good. This is purely for him to be set into an Alp tanker. What does he need? So you got to be very careful about how you kind of change that. Paladins, honestly, I feel like Paladins are already strong. They really don't need much else to put them in a tanker. I think you can run a Paladin in a tanker perfectly fine. A Merc in a tanker is also perfectly fine. Giving them that back snare would put them on par with BM. I'm not mad at it, but I also haven't played Merc as much, so I would probably need other people's input on having that back snare. But from the outside looking in, me playing a Bard, me playing Cab, me playing like Friar, like I can tell that whenever I am in a group with a Pala, I'm like, this is awesome. I have this AF chant. Like, I am rolling. So I don't know if they need any more buffs. And for a Merc, I don't really feel any difference. Normally they get like rooted out or they get CC'd out, which kind of sucks for Mercs. But I haven't had any issues with Armsmen, Paladins, any of our melee, except I guess a Merc I don't see as much. So I could see back snare might be where it is. Maybe that is a little boost that they need. But yeah, really appreciate you guys for watching, guys. If you like the channel, make sure you follow. If you guys have any input, put it in the comments. I'm here and I'm reading all this stuff. So yeah, peace.